I think it could definitely be the next big disruption, particularly in the area where we operate. FedEx is a very large enterprise. We serve 220 countries. We're moving, as we sit here at the moment, 12 million shipments around the world. Many of them cross borders, have to interface with customs authorities, Food and Drug Administrations, all kinds of needs for information. And, we at FedEx built the first chain of custody system. When I went in the transportation business in the early 70s, the way it operated is you gave something to the track and trace things. Initially, because we needed it for our own in-shipping locations with PCs, and then the internet came along, and obviously of the internet. So now here comes blockchain. That's sort of the chain of custody system that FedEx in unalterable fashion. This could be a very, very big thing in terms of supply chains and the entire transportation sector, which, as you mentioned, is just beyond massive. It's at the heart of everything that modern life revolves around.
Well, sure, Don. The application of these custody chains, which is how we think about it in the context of supply chains, is so critical to the information asset. I mean, we're operating in this nexus between the physical world and the digital world. And people really count on us to be able to bring those two things together so that what's happening physically as we move things around the world is accurately reflected in the digital world. But this is such a game changer for us because it extends those boundaries outside of our four walls. We've been able to do that particularly well with our own databases and our own custodial systems, as Fred described. But now what we have the opportunity to do is through consortiums, through industry standards, through things like the Blockchain and Transportation Alliance, we have the ability to collaborate with customers, with other carriers, to really provide custody chains that are completely different. Now, the technology itself is something that we're working to perfect, and we're pretty agnostic about the primary platforms right now, and we're working with everyone to try and figure out how best to deploy and manage chains around custody. So Ethereum and Hyperledger, and then more to come as we're looking down the lane. But from a technology standpoint, this is fascinating for us because at the end of the day, our brand is about trust. And so the ability to extend that trust out beyond just the things we do is something our customers and I think the world would really like for us to do.
Well, again, going back to the traffic that crosses borders, trust is an essential legal requirement of the transaction. So if you're shipping something from China or Southeast Asia that says, I'm a load of semiconductors, and in actual fact what it is fentanyl, you got a big problem. And I wish it weren't the case, but that happens more than you would hope, that people try to avoid paying duties and taxes, or they're sending some sort of illicit item across borders for whatever reason. So what blockchain has the potential of doing for the first time ever is to make that information available to all of the parties. Today, you only get what one party wants to make available, and it may or may not be the correct piece of information, or as I mentioned a moment ago, it may be just a linguistic mistake or a classification difference where some countries call a device this and another country calls it that. So blockchain has the potential to completely revolutionize the trade across borders.
I guess my message is that it's a world of currency competition. You have, even among nation states, you have lots of currencies, and they seem to survive. So they're all part of an equilibrium. They're used locally Not everybody uses the dollar all around the world, and you could argue that's because nation states are involved in the local economies. But I think you have to think in terms of it's going to be competitive and multiple currencies are going to be trading around, and you're going to have this problem of exchange rates between the various currencies. So I wanted to point this out because I said unwittingly, there is no company that's trying to solve that problem. The companies are trying to solve problems of issuing the currency in the first place. They're not taking into account the fact that there are also many other currencies out there.
When you think about the role of central bankers in this space, is it really to observe and comment, or do you feel there's a more active role that the Fed could be taking with regard to Bitcoin or any of the other crypto assets?
The drift to a non-uniform currency could become a serious issue for the U.S. if cryptocurrency takes up a large volume of trade. So you could imagine going into the store, now you have 10 different ways or 100 different ways that you can pay. And you're contemplating in your head, should I pay with one cryptocurrency or another cryptocurrency or another cryptocurrency or a dollar? That is exactly what people have not liked historically. That's the non-uniform currency aspect that people have not liked.
You buy a burger with a Bitcoin and then discover, hey, it's worth
do I have to
$1,000.
hold some of each type of currency in order to make different types of trades? People have not liked that. And then what if one of the currencies blows up on me and now that one's worth zero? So now part of my wealth has gone away. So people have not liked that kind of thing, and they want a uniform thing. A dollar is a dollar. The economists looking at that have said, what we want is to not get ideas about value mixed up with nominal ideas about which currency we're using. We want people to really make judgments about what's really worth, how much is that really worth, and how much am I really willing to pay for it, and make the exchange. So you want to get that focus.
So and we only have not much time left, but what do you make of the current popularity of cryptocurrencies? Is it simply because the technology is there and if you build it, they will come, or are we in a Wild West sort of situation?
Part of the subtext of my talk is how great the monetary theory literature has been. Mm-hmm. It predicted things like the coexistence of the currencies. It predicted that there would be a lot of issuance of private money if you allowed that kind of thing to occur. And so there have been a lot of the predictions, and it also predicted exchange rate volatility, so there have been a lot of predictions that have come out.
History repeats itself.
Yeah, I guess.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, please join me in thanking President Bullard
Thank
for
you.
this conversation.
So I've seen the whole financial revolution happening, and I've seen how skipping a whole generation of technology from landline to directly mobile phone, and then using that mobile phone not only for fintech, but also a lot of healthcare technologies and infrastructure around it. So with all that knowledge, when I started looking at blockchain, I first got it through a pitch at MIT, which was using Ethereum blockchain for refugee challenges. And it was a very interesting solution on identity that got me super excited. And then my aha moment was meeting Joseph Lubin at one of the IFC Next Generation Tech Leader program, and 3.5 hours deep conversation into how the investment should be, where is the optimized method between investing in equity and tokens, and how the market is going, what is a bubble, what is the reality, and what's going to stay. I think I got converted within 3.5 hours.
Do you still feel that having grown up or spent time in Africa, do you still feel that there is significant potential in the developing world?
I think this technology, the ethos with which this technology was developed is deep rooted what's needed in developing countries. Being in Africa and Middle East for 8 years out of my life, Egypt, Jordan, all those places, not only from the financial layer, which is the transfer or remittances, but also having a verified, traceable, accountable solutions, whether it's on health records, owning your own health records, owning your own data, or it's about whatever government is doing on land titling projects. We just recently took land titling and supply chain to India, and there is such a huge demand from not only state level, but directly from the Prime Minister's office, proves that the technology is here to stay and grow in a big way.
So we've done a lot of sizing of bubbles and sizing of asset classes and when they pass certain milestones as a percent of the global economy. So to give you a frame of reference here, the internet bubble at its peak, the equities comprising the internet bubble were 6% of global GDP. So that we had never seen anything like that. At its peak last year, the crypto asset ecosystem was at about 0.8% of GDP. So although it may have felt like we were in the internet bubble, we weren't. And in fact, the way we subscribe to Carlota Perez's view of the world, we think this will be a 50-year S-curve, and we are in the very earliest stages of what we would call the frenzy stage, which can last a long time. So to give you a sense of that, the internet bubble, the frenzy stage was the late 90s. Now, 10, 15, 20 years later, it's really happening, the ramifications of it. We are still in the very early stages of the frenzy here. And you know, that can go a long way. So wouldn't want to dismiss it with that word frenzy. It's a very important time for capital to be flowing in and enabling all of the opportunities that we're talking about here.
In Bermuda's parliament, my government laid the Digital Asset Business Act this past Friday. This law will introduce a framework for our financial markets regulator, the Bermuda Monetary Authority, to oversee persons carrying on digital asset businesses for the protection of the interests of clients or potential clients for persons that are carrying on these businesses. This regulation will serve companies that operate exchanges, facilitate payments in virtual currencies, provide digital asset wallets, or those who generally issue, sell, or redeem digital assets as a business activity. There is no other place worldwide that has introduced laws to provide certainty to the marketplace. Only Bermuda has. At the same time, we will introduce a regulatory sandbox that will allow companies to innovate with cutting-edge fintech while we work closely with our regulator to bring these products to market so you can use them to scale globally. The Digital Asset Bill is the second piece of legislation that Bermuda has introduced in the last month to provide needed certainty for companies. The first, as I alluded to earlier, was the Industry Revolutionizing Initial Coin Offering Act, which will provide regulatory certainty for token issuers. The most important part of our legislation is it covers all types of digital asset tokens. Whether they be utility token or a security token, Bermuda has rules in place to ensure that it begins safely and lawfully from our shores. We do regulation very well in Bermuda. So while there may be a lot of travel to various conferences and countries may tell you what it is that they may be doing in the future, we can have certainty in Bermuda because we have actually done it. It is a place where you can leave New York on Monday morning, arrive in Bermuda by noon, meet government officials, regulators, and our high-quality service providers in the space of a day, have dinner on the beach in the evening, and be back at your desk by noon in New York City. Yeah. But let me be very clear. If you're a bad actor or you have a checkered past, don't waste your time. Bermuda is not an easy jurisdiction to get into. We have strict compliance controls to protect against money laundering and terrorist financing, and have extensive due diligence checks on sources of funds. However, once you're in, and if you continue to abide by our rules, you will have full access to the platform that we are building to power the future. If you don't follow our rules, however, our prison does have water views, but it is a prison. Our approach is working, and companies are recognizing that Bermuda is a serious option. Recently, there have been a string of announcements of companies moving to or setting up operations in Bermuda. Over the past 3 weeks, the Binance Group, which is one of the world's largest digital asset exchanges, allowed plans to set up their global compliance-based Bermuda. Medici Ventures, a subsidiary of Overstock.com, will be announced that they'll be setting up operations in Bermuda and will use Bermuda as an innovation hub. And on Friday at Ethereum, we announced that Omega One, a consensus mesh company, will be moving to Bermuda as we look to solve the digital asset custody problem. And we expect more announcements in the current days. So, in closing, our vision is for Bermuda to be that well-regulated jurisdiction for technologists and innovators who are building solutions that will power the economy of the future. A future where blockchain technology and the digitization of assets are part of everyday business. There are some countries that have innovation hubs and accelerators, but there is only one country where the entire island is an innovation hub to accelerate your innovations. It is Bermuda, and I hope that over the next few days, you will visit our website, fintech.bm, or take the time to visit the Bermuda Suite located downstairs in Concourse E, so you can learn more about what we have to offer and to experience the Bermuda difference directly by talking with our government officials, our regulators, and our service providers in one place. Thank you, and I look forward to learning more and hopefully welcoming you to Bermuda in the very near future.
In Europe, we consider that we have to find and explore new definitions for the ICOs and for the tokens. We're going to try to make sure that there's going to be some registry, some verification for the companies that want to set up an ICO, and some obligations, but we will not restrict. We're just going to make sure that people will have options of where to invest and to understand that, as you said, we'll try to have specific definitions. It's not easy as the technology is developing, but we're working on those. Even the virtual currencies report, we still don't have a specific definition. We're monitoring the virtual currencies and how they can be treated. We did have a response from Draghi about the virtual currencies, ECB, Mario Draghi, and he didn't consider them to be a currency, but they are monitoring it. And the European Court of Justice, they are treating the currencies as legal tender. So they have VAT exemptions. So you understand we have contradictions. So until we have something specific on the ICOs, we're going to work around those. But as you mentioned, we are more policy driven in the European Union. So we have politicians trying to be faster. But we have the blockchain observatory, and we're going to have an ICO observatory to have people from the market giving us recommendations and some suggestions on how we should proceed. So we try to work very close to the developers to understand the technology. I'm struggling 3 years now. It's not easy.
For everyone in the room, if any of you know a state or federal elected official, can I beg of you, go buy them a coffee or a beverage of your choice? You may have somewhat similar. On occasion, you'll sit down with a member of Congress and you realize they've never thought about the concept of a distributive network or a ledger or these things, and they have no concept how this works. And it's not that they're daft, it's their specialty is something different. I have one member I've been working with, and he has a PhD in invasive insects. That's his specialty in life. If you want to know about invasive insects, I have a member of Congress who's one of the world's leading experts. Talk to him about a distributive ledger, and he has no idea what I'm talking about. I need your help, because for many of us, you understand the complications we're at. Our regulators, we have them clashing into each other. There's also now becoming some territorial disputes.
Or I guess what types of attributes are you advocating for? What would you like to see, or what can we expect to see out of the EU sandbox?
I can tell you, first of all, we have a blockchain alliance now of around 22 or 23 member states. We have more member states joining, and we try to have, for the public sector, to find ways where we can actually use blockchain to improve the services, to remove friction, to remove the cost, to make it cheaper, easier, to solve some identity problems we have. We have also migration problems and with the refugees. So these blockchain technologies offering us an enormous range of solutions. So we're going to explore this first. I think the regulatory sandbox coming up in about a year. So I cannot still say a lot of things, but it's going to be around fintech also, and some solutions, as I said, on the ID. But the problem is, as you well mentioned, that I have colleagues, we're 750, and if you ask how many of them have e-wallets, how many?
I'm terrified. to
Here,
ask.
everybody must have. How many of you have e-wallets?
Hell, I'm working to try to, look, I'm trying to get the passive RFID actually put under my flesh, so, you know.
No. Well, in the parliament, there are not many, and they don't understand it, and it takes time to educate politicians and to get them familiar with this technology. The good thing is that we have some open-minded politicians that are now exploring this technology, members of the Commission. We have a woman European Commissioner, Maria Gabriel, and we have the head of blockchain, Peter Isilgalvis. They are very supportive of this technology, and they built up this alliance, so this means that we're going to have very soon results. We're also giving, for you that are interested, whoever has an idea and a specific product on blockchain application, and it also has an impact of social good, so blockchain for good solution, then there are some awards given. 2019, 5 million to 5 good ideas, and this is given by the European Union. This is a way to get closer to them and to attract solutions that can give us social impact too.
Straight to the moon, Bitcoin all the way.